Hello and welcome to another edition of Heavy Hands. I'm Connor, that's Phil.
Nope.
Abbreviated intro, because I really wanted to start the show with just a single word. And here it goes. Well, what's the UK equivalent of whelp, Phil? You guys have something like that? I
feel like... Yeah, no, it's too exclamatory. I feel like it's... I mean, we're just so naturally like that.
Yeah, it's
true.
Know,
just
your whole life is a whelp.
Acceptance of everything. Yeah, we are simply whelp the people.
Yeah. I could tell the listeners, since they don't get to hear, aside from the first off-topic bonus we published on our Patreon last month, they don't get to hear most of our unrecorded chats. And I can tell you that for however many years it's been now, every single time I have asked Phil how he's doing, how's it been going, the answer is not too bad. Very British.
Yep.
Could be worse.
My brother says living and breathing.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's almost like that would actually play in the U.S. too. That's like something an old Midwest guy or an old Southern guy would say. Still kicking.
Yep.
UFC 313 happened. Magomed Ankalaev is the new light heavyweight champion. We're going to talk about some other events of this card, of course. Bobby Green has been sent into the realm of glue, perhaps permanently. Justin Gaethje and Ruffy Fiziev had, a slightly different, but essentially the same exact fight they had last time, et cetera, et cetera. Ignacio Bahamondes, the flyer you took on him, Phil, that paid off, although I got to say it seems in part because Jalen Turner was not there. The way that I'm used to him being. He's been going through it, unbeknownst to me. But the main event is the main event for a reason. It may not have been a fantastic fight, although I was actually surprised at how much people were hating it live, because for me this was a Woodley Thompson kind of fight where, like, I did know this isn't going to hold up that well on a repeat viewing, but the stakes were high. I know an Alex Pereira fight is not over till it's over. And also, it did have some big moments to go along with all of the tedium around that. It was a frustrating fight, but I didn't find it that boring on the first viewing. Live, I had a good time. Of course, I have now watched it multiple times because I'm writing an article about it, and I can confirm that it is boring, but you didn't even have the truly live experience, I assume. You watched it after the fact.
No.
Did you know the result?
Yep. No, I didn't.
Okay, so what was your experience like seeing Ankalaev become the new king?
I did not think this was a very interesting fight.
Yeah. Most people agree with you.
For a different reason to most people. I think most people found it particularly annoying because, for the same reason that it's always incredibly frustrating to watch a fighter that you like,
of course,
kind of shit the bed.
Well, I want to talk about that, because that doesn't seem to be the thing most people are annoyed about, which was the really surprising thing to me. Please go on, but the fact people are talking about this like it was Ankalaev exclusively like holding Pereira against the fence. I got to remind you folks, most of the fight was not that. Most of the fight was Alex Pereira not having an answer at range. That was the part I found frustrating. He frustrated me a lot more than Ankalaev did, I got to tell you.
Yeah, but most, again, like in those kind of situations, people are not going to like reach for the truth. This kind of, fans are a lot like the fighters themselves.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily come up with the real answers for why they didn't like a fight, and it will only be in down the line that they will be like, oh yeah, this was a really bad performance from Alex Pereira.
The fans are actually gunning for this year's post-fight rationalization award with the now should we start scoring takedown defense positively debate.
Oh God, yeah.
The fans
I did see that.
The fans are gunning for a collective post-fight rationalization award.
Yeah, that one is a classic reach that pops up every now and again,
Yeah.
and it's entirely when. I mean, yeah, that's how you can tell that all of this stuff is cope, because, as you said, it wasn't even like a grappling heavy fight.
No.
It was mostly just
one round, really. One round was dominated by the shitty wrestling.
Yeah. And, we'll probably get to the scoring a bit later, which again seemed extremely, frankly, inconclusive. Yeah, this was a good performance, I thought, from Magomed Ankalaev, and like a super bad one from Alex Pereira that maybe we should have been more prepared for than we were.
Yeah. Yeah, did you pick Ankalaev here, or was it just Zane?
No, it was just Zane.
God, I'm gonna have to hear Zane crowing about this. You know how many times, like, a week that motherfucker says the phrase, I gotta pat myself on the back?
I can't imagine.
Cut the pretense. Leave the back alone. We know what you'd rather be patting, kid.
Yep.
Yeah,
that's probably the worst outcome of any of this, let's be honest.
It's intolerable. But
it's made Zane feel like he knows what he's talking about.
Ugh.
He's gonna be riding this high for a year.
I do think there were a lot of elements of this that we should have seen coming. But even saying that, I can't even convince myself of it. Like, if you watch Poatan's fight with Artem Vakhitov in Glory, you can see him getting smushed by some pressure.
Yep.
But Vakhitov is a high output, swarming kind of pressure fighter in that fight. He is like fully overloading Pereira and like forcing him he's handcuffing him with just constant offense, making him block everything. That is like an overwhelming kind of genuine offense. I know things are different in MMA, and I suspect the takedowns were a really smart idea from Ankalaev. I don't care how he landed none of them. I suspect they were part of why Pereira was so hesitant to throw anything. But I still, even having seen it, can't convince myself that I would have expected Pereira to have this few answers for Ankalaev's pressure. Not that Ankalaev is a bad pressure fighter. In fact, he's clearly the best, most natural pressure fighter Pereira has faced in MMA. He's way more determined to stay on the front foot than Izzy, who tried it for about 10% of their 2 MMA fights. And he's a lot less reckless than Yuri Prochazka, who could barely be described as actually pressuring so much as just running at Pereira and doing a suicide run. Like, Ankalaev is a good pressure fighter. We've seen it affect a lot of light heavyweights. But man, you gotta ask, looking at this fight, what did Alex Pereira and his team expect from Ankalaev? They seemed very ill prepared for this matchup.
Yeah. I think part of it is the way you gotta be prepared for this kind of stuff is I think it's to do with the dynamic that comes with changing weight classes. Because a lot of the time when people shift weight classes, you got to ask yourself, like, how well does someone style? work up a weight class, against people who are bigger and who are going to be hitting harder, but also going to be more physical.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of stuff. And one of the basic things you need is just to be like, are you still going to be big enough at this weight class?
Mm-hmm.
And obviously Pereira was always going to be, he was always going to be big enough for light heavyweight because he's, as we know,
yeah,
has either a magic spell or a curse of some description that makes him bigger than everyone.
Yeah.
He just gets slightly less big, dependent on how big they are. So, if he was standing next to Shaq, he would only look like a tiny amount bigger than Shaq. So, but yeah, he's, so there was sort of no worry about that with him moving up. And he was also, and he's also actually got an actual technical base, which meant that he's sort of torn through a bunch of light heavyweights without too much issue. But it did kind of serve to mask something, which is that if you are big enough to move up a weight class without any issues, there is a distinct chance that you are a size bully.
Yeah.
And this was a problem with, Conor McGregor, eventually, when he started running into, big lightweights, that there are parts of your game that don't actually function all that well. And in this case, it is Pereira's footwork. He has never really needed to have to close distance on his own terms or to have a, need to, retreat on his own terms that much because, A, he can nuke people with one left hook counter, and B, because, he's just colossal. So he's just gotten into this habit of just sort of slowly moving around the cage.
Yep.
And and this was the first time we've seen him against someone who's somewhat close to his own size and who's just going to consistently stay in position.
Yep.
And who has actually genuinely quite good footwork. And I think we just kind of saw his ability to track down opponents just getting slightly exposed.
Yep. Yeah, I'm glad you pointed out that for me was also the biggest the biggest aspect of how this fight played out was Pereira's footwork. And I think you have an excellent point there that essentially, people were saying how come he didn't jab? Does he not know you can jab a southpaw? I'm like,
he jabbed so much for an MMA fighter. It just rarely connected.
And he jabbed the shit out of Khalil Roundtree, who was a southpaw for the entirety of their fight. He knows that. Mm-hmm. He just was not comfortable sharing the pocket with Ankalaev. Again, it seems like something I should have seen coming, but hearing myself say the words, Alex Pereira is scared to engage in the pocket with Magomed Ankalaev feels crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can see elements of this fight that we should have picked up on. But yeah, again, the idea that I was going to, that at the end of this fight, was just going to be without landing any takedowns, Magomed Ankalaev is effectively simply going to outwork Alex Pereira.
Yeah. Completely outwork him.
No, that's not what's going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, and also, even if I certainly expected Ankalaev to give him some problems. I knew Ankalaev had quick hands. I knew Pereira was counterable. But as we said last week, I was there's going to come a point where he's just I'm going to punch with you. And fuck it. I'm just going to tuck my chin and try to throw shorter, harder shots. And he tried that maybe 3 times.
Yeah.
In the entire fight. I was watching live. You can look back at my tweets. I'm there's going to come a moment when Ankalaev drops the ball and takes his eye off the prize and loses focus as he is wont to do. And that moment did arrive. It just didn't change anything. can I say, I don't want to get into a whole scoring discussion, but Alex Pereira, I don't care how close the rounds were, how much Ankalaev, did his characteristic, I'm going to stop fighting now thing. I'm going to stop pressing my advantage. I don't care about all that. Ankalaev won the only clear rounds of this fight.
Yep.
He won the only clear rounds, and one of those rounds was very, very clear. Round 2. He was all over Pereira. Pereira did not deserve to win this fight. That's
absolutely not. Again, I have no strong feelings like on the actual scoring of it, but yeah, it's the old probabilistic thing. Ankalaev won the clear rounds, and Alex Pereira, simply the way he fought this fight, he absolutely did not deserve to win.
No, to me, it would have felt very wrong for Pereira to win this on the strength of 3 swing rounds, most of which were largely defined by him continually giving way to the same pressure that was really intensely beating him in Ankalaev's good rounds. It's just that Ankalaev was taking his, he kept his foot on the gas, but was giving a lot of turn signals. He wasn't actually going for it. He was just pressuring positionally a lot of the time, but Pereira didn't respond in kind. He just didn't. So
yeah, this was a shockingly like late career Izzy performance.
Oh yeah. But yeah, let's get back to the footwork. I mean, that to me is the big technical failing for Pereira here. I want to talk about and I'm writing about this too, so forgive me if I seem over researched or overwrought on this topic. I want to talk about hop steps. A hop step is a move you can do which breaks the rules of footwork. Because typically in fighting, you scuttle around. That's the way you're taught to move, right? If you're moving backwards, the back foot moves first, and then the trailing foot catches up, and you regain your original stance. If you're moving left, the left foot moves first. You always move the outside foot first. You widen and then contract. That's how you move, because you never want to bring your feet together. You never want to cross your feet. You never want to bring them in line with one another, because that means you can't do shit and you can't take a shot. Hop steps are a compromise, because it's actually a very inefficient way to get around if you're just scuttling everywhere. If you need to cover more distance, it's a very slow way of, moving like a caterpillar or like a crab is a very slow way of getting around. So a hop step is when you say you're hop stepping backwards, you bring the front foot back first, but you essentially move the right foot before the front foot is touched down. You skip, more or less. And if you know McGregor Aldo, you know the move I'm talking about. That's the footwork McGregor loved to use to set up his back step cross counters. That is an alternative way of moving, and it is situational. It is not a replacement for basic footwork. The reason basic footwork is good is not just because it makes you safer to always have one foot in contact with the ground and never narrow your stance. It's more flexible in every way. That stability means you can throw at any point during the movement. If I do a typical sidestep, I don't have to get back to my stance before I unleash a counter if I've got a throw or if the opening is there. You can't do that when both feet are off the ground at once. You need to reset. And so to use that as a maneuver to set up counters, your timing has to be perfect. Typically, you want to keep both feet on the ground. And this happened over and over and over in this fight. Every time Ankalaev pressed into the pocket, it only got worse as the fight got on, even though Ankalaev was less potent as the fight went on. Every single time he would step into the pocket, Pereira would skip backwards. He would Edson Barboza style gallop backwards, and he just could not get his feet set in a comfortable enough like window of time to feel that it was safe to throw something. So at a certain point, like this is the thing, like Ankalaev did take his foot off the gas. He stopped throwing with intention, but it didn't matter because the positional pressure alone was making it impossible for Pereira to get punches off, or at least making it such an uncomfortable prospect that he never felt safe throwing punches. That's crazy to me. Like, you know, I've seen Pereira using this footwork a lot, but I've never seen it pressure tested like this. I made the mistake of assuming that he did know how to, you know, take a simple backstep or a simple pivot or a simple sidestep where he can actually respond if the opponent continues trying to press the issue. It turns out he does not. He just like didn't have the move in his arsenal. That was the shocking thing. The man didn't have the footwork. All he could do was keep going back to that same hop-stepping maneuver where he was just never able to set his feet.
Yeah. And, yeah, credit to Magomed Ankalaev. You know, he took his eye off the ball, as you kind of said. He didn't panic.
No.
He had a consistent path to, you know, the fight that he wanted to have, and he mostly just stuck to it.
Yeah.
You know, he didn't get pushed out of the fight as it went on. I mean, he did a bit. Is Magomed Ankalaev. But, yeah, and I was thinking, like, this before the fight, is that these kind of fighters, like the Leon Edwards and the Ankalaevs and so on, the inconsistent ones, I think they often do perform quite well in title fights, because so much of the central psychology of these people is that they want to fight well. They want to, like, you know, they're not necessarily, they're not particularly like clutch, but they are focused on doing things correctly. Which also means, you know, it's why they tend to suddenly have, like, lapses where they get figured out or whatever, because they just get stuck. They're not thinking about how to win the fight.
Yeah.
They just suddenly get lost in like, doing one technique over and over.
The mistakes they make
they just become predictable.
The mistakes they make are generally, like, negative in nature. They stop doing certain things, but they don't make a lot of positive mistakes where it's like, oh, that thing you did was a huge mistake. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, they just let the other person hang around and the other person comes back on them.
Yeah.
Something like that. And it's because a lot of the time they're trying to hold themselves in a certain, to a certain standard. And the thing is that when these people get to title fights, they then tell themselves, I have to actually try and win this one. I actually, you know, there's no, like, I want to do these techniques in the best way at the best time kind of thing. I simply have, this is not practice for anything. This is not rehearsal. There's no, I'm going to do this better the next time kind of thing. I simply have to execute this one time.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, they do, I think, often that kind of fighter does tend to perform quite well in their title fights. The problem is Alexa Grasso also. But also the problem with this is that kind of thing is not a habit you can break easily, and they will always revert to form. Yeah. So I do get the impression that, like, despite the fact that he, you know, from a technical standpoint, we should see Magomed Ankalaev reign for some time, he's probably not going to. Yeah, this was a very concerning fight from Pereira. Firstly, yeah, like as you said, and as we should have perhaps picked up on a bit more, the technical failings were concerning. Mm-hmm. But more than that, it is the fact that he just let this one slip away.
Yeah, he didn't. That was the other thing, is like, even if he didn't have a technical solution, I did expect him to simply go for it.
Yes.
You know,
that
like,
he could just push Magomed Ankalaev out of the fight with sheer violence.
Just try to bully him. And the truth is that, in that regard, Ankalaev was the guy who made the critical calls. Not Pereira. There's a moment in round 2, which is Ankalaev's big round, where he is, at several moments beating the shit out of Alex Pereira. And, he lands some good shots, and then he does the Ankalaev thing where he's like, all right, I'm bored of pressure. Let's let you come at me and see if you give me anything. And Pereira gave him something. He gave him a high kick that was only partially blocked, and then he gave him a hard front kick right to the stomach. And Ankalaev was getting backed up right to the fence, and you can see it on his face and in his body language. He recognizes, this is bad. This is going to lose me the fight. And Ankalaev may habitually allow moments like that, but he does not habitually succumb to them. As you said, he's not a guy who panics. He's actually a very calm, determined fighter. It's just that same as Leon Edwards, they may not have the certain clutch gene, but they do fight when they have to fight. Anytime Ankalaev has ever been hurt, anytime he's getting pressured really hard, he goes for it. And in that moment, Pereira is pressuring him. He lands these 2 kicks, and then he's right in Ankalaev's grill. And Ankalaev says, fuck it, and just plants his feet and throws a really hard 1-2. And whacks Alex Pereira, and then chases him all the way across the cage. That's a critical moment when you have to gamble. There's nothing particularly technical going on there. It's just recognizing the direction of the fight, recognizing what's happening to the momentum and the initiative, and making a decision to take a risk because you cannot allow this to go on. You can't allow this momentum to continue. And Ankalaev found those moments when he needed them. He needed precious few of them because Pereira pressed him so infrequently. But the contrast is that Pereira needed those moments for the entire back half of the fight. He needed to make the decision to just fight Ankalaev. And fuck it, if I get hurt, at least I'm going to create some chances. And he couldn't convince himself to do it. That is concerning.
Yeah, it was. I saw a article or an interview after this, and I saw the preview on Twitter where it was like Alex Pereira expresses disappointment with boring style, vows to make changes in rematch, and I was like, oh, that's good. He recognizes that he fought really badly.
No,
and it was like, no, the disappointment. He was like, it was him talking about how Ankalaev got rewarded for just holding him up against the fence. And it was like, man, that was not what that fight was about.
No.
At all.
Only one round. I gotta say too, Pereira's wrestling defense, adequate.
Yeah.
Man did not get taken down. He, again, should have showed more urgency in escaping those positions or punishing Ankalaev for insisting on clinching up with him, which he didn't. But the wrestling was
the only takedown.
That's true. He got that dump. He went for another little Thai foot sweep at one point too that kind of half worked. That was not the defining characteristic of the fight. The parts of the fight that he was really losing and the parts that he should be concerned by was that, in the 5th round, the fact that people are out here talking about he clearly won that 5th round. Did he? That's what a clear round?
If he did, it was from circling around the perimeter of the cage for the most part.
I don't think any of the rounds he won were clear. Not one of them.
No.
He didn't do enough.
Not at all. Yeah, I think we probably could find a 50-45 Ankalaev in there somewhere. As a plausible score.
I totally agree that Ankalaev getting 4 rounds is more plausible than Pereira getting 3. And I'm not saying some of those rounds weren't close and that there's no argument to be made, but
I don't think there's a definitive Pereira round in that fight.
No.
I agree.
So yeah, what more is there to say? We can talk about the rematch. I think it's pretty obvious what we'd like to see Pereira do differently.
Wrestle more. Like, he's clearly got the advantage there. He's just come out and just blast double him straight off the bat.
I mean, look, there's two ways to go. With
also, more esoteric foot sweeps and so on would just be great.
Sure. Yeah, I always like seeing that. Why not? Clearly, there's two ways to address what we both see as the real crucial problem of this was Pereira's footwork. There's two ways you can address that. You can learn footwork, or you can work around that issue by insisting on pressuring, no matter what.
Yeah. And
that's probably the more approachable one. I think it honestly has a pretty good chance of working. Even if we saw that Pereira's defense is really not up to snuff with Ankalaev's accurate, quick punching, but just conceptually, this is clearly a fight where you cannot allow this man to pressure you. It's just not acceptable. You're not going to win. So that's a thing I'd like to see him do next time.
Yeah, he just needs, if he's not going to be able to, like, close down Ankalaev, he needs he needs to have a system of, like, weapons for closing in. And I'm not sure if that's obviously easier than having to, relearn footwork from scratch. But they just need like a step in right hand to the body or something.
Yeah.
You need a few weapons which will allow you to close distance and attack at the same time, and you need to be able to and you need to use them to cover your entries. You need to be prepared to move forward the whole time. I mean, this is one of the ways in which, like, Glover Teixeira is obviously a much, much, much worse striker than Alex Pereira, but he has never had this issue.
No. Yeah. Glover Teixeira would probably give Ankalaev one hell of a fight. He might get fucking knocked out with an uppercut or something, but he would probably make it really uncomfortable for Ankalaev, who also does not love being pressured insistently. It's just because his style is really very unique, not only for this division, but for MMA. There aren't many counterpunchers in this sport. Nobody's actually figured out the solutions. I mean, the fact that I just assumed that, like, Ankalaev's been fighting all these shitty light heavyweights, but, like, Pereira is not going to be convinced to stop throwing combinations of any description by the threat of a counter, because Pereira knows that's the thing you don't do against counterpunchers. That's what they want, is for you to throw single hesitant strikes. That's like a fucking soldier walking alone across no man's land. Like, easy target, dude. You need to come in number in order to at the very least, just test the guy's accuracy and test how defensively aware he is when he's trying to counter you. Give him complications to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about how much Pereira has improved as a fighter since coming into the UFC, even as a striker.
Yeah.
Obviously, two things is that that sort of blinded us to some core flaws in his game, and B, maybe it kind of blinded Alex Pereira to some core flaws in his game as well.
It turns out he's also been feasting on shitty light heavyweights.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I said at the end. At least we might have, not picked this correctly, but I'm glad that at least at the end I was like, he's been carving through people who kind of suck.
Yeah.
Like, and, there's basically 3 actually good fighters at this weight class, and there's probably just 2 now, because I suspect Jan Blachowicz is going to be shot the next time we see him.
Yeah.
But there's these 2, and there's Jan Blachowicz, and neither of them looked good against Jan Blachowicz.
No.
And yeah, this is the thing, is that Pereira can get away with being either colossally huge or against people who are closer to his size, he's been able to, capitalize on the fact that they're bad.
Yeah.
Like Yuri or what's his face? Jamal Hill.
Yep.
And yeah, I think he was suddenly shocked to find himself back fighting against someone who was approaching his size and who could actually strike.
Yeah. Part of the impression that Ankalaev is like, it's kind of an illusion that he's struggling more with this level of competition. It's because of his style. Mm-hmm. And it's because of his brain that he is having these much less decisive, less convincing performances. But like the reality is, like, they are fighting the same dudes. And Pereira just has a style that nukes a guy who's not as good as him. And Ankalaev has a style that threatens to nuke a guy who's not as good as him and then kind of stops paying attention.
Yep.
But clearly, Ankalaev has not lost since his UFC debut. The worst he has had are dreadfully uninspired performances. But it is not an accident that he has not lost. When a fight goes out of control, and I gotta say, researching for the article I wrote on him last week, facepunching.substack.com, he's gotten hurt a lot in the UFC. He got rocked by fucking Klitsch and Abreu in their fight.
Really? I just completely forgotten that one. He got
briefly stunned by Klitsch and Abreu. He got rocked by Thiago Santos. Like, he gets caught.
Maybe Alex Pereira would get rocked by Thiago Santos as well.
He gets caught unawares plenty of times, but he doesn't lose. Because when it comes time to make a critical decision, now or never, I can't allow this to continue, Ankalaev does it. And it's kind of hard to say that Pereira has that. I mean, I guess Pereira has something which effectively replaces for that ability, which is that he can just, land a nuclear bomb on your chin and it doesn't matter if he's, made a good decision or not. But I still am stunned. I can't believe that he just allowed this fight to happen for as long as it did. And I'm taking nothing away from Ankalaev. I think Ankalaev, he essentially had the Rakic fight. He had what is for him a pretty damn good, consistent performance.
Yep.
But I really expected that if it came down to it, Pereira would at least take a gamble. And the really alarming thing is that he was not able to convince himself that he was losing. Or that it was, you know what I mean? That circumstances were dire enough that he needed to go. Just go. Maybe you'll lose worse, but you're definitely going to lose if this keeps going. And I don't care how ineffectual some of Ankalaev's rounds were. A fighter with Pereira's experience should have had that feeling for the entire last 3 rounds of this fight. This is not going according to plan. This is difficult. I'm getting pushed around. I'm uncomfortable. Just intuitively, he should detect that things are not under control. And yeah. I would assume he'll come in prepared.
As you said,
go on.
It's like Izzy against Strickland.
Yeah, very much like that.
You are getting consistently outworked by someone that is not very scary.
Yeah.
Not particularly scary.
Someone who was scary at the beginning of the fight and has kind of stopped being scary for the 3 rounds since.
Yes, and you are not showing any urgency. This should, as we said with Izzy, this should be setting off absolute DEFCON 1 alarm klaxons in his camp. Of the, do you still want to do this anymore kind of level. Like, they should be very, very concerned.
Yeah. Fortunately for Pereira, this is not necessarily part of a pattern that extends over several fights. For Adesanya, that Strickland fight was like the culmination of some bad signs we were seeing for years ahead of time. For Pereira, bad preparation, bad style matchup is still a plausible way to think about what happened here.
Yep.
And so there's still a chance he comes in the rematch, and whether he has made technical improvements or strategic improvements or simply persuaded himself that if things go this badly again, he has to go, I think he can definitely win this matchup still.
Yeah. Or he just lands like one huge nuclear bomb and none of it matters.
Or that, yeah, that also.
That's exactly the same fight and just lands a left hook at some point.
That is always an option too. I'm very curious to see the rematch, but surprising result.
Yep.
All right.
Very interesting though.
Very interesting, honestly. Maybe not a great fight, but it has changed the landscape of the light heavyweight division. And also, on the positive note, it pissed off Dana White.
Yeah, so much.
So, yeah.
As I said,
it's not all bad.
It's one of the better things about the UFC model is that boring good fighters just get their chance.
Sooner or later, they tend to get a chance.
It doesn't matter whether you're the promotional darling of the organization. They might do things to attempt to, to maybe tip the scales slightly. Like, for example, booking said boring fighter who's quite religious in the middle of Ramadan. But, doesn't matter.
Yep.
So, yeah, in its own boring way, genuinely, good thing for the sport.
Yeah, he didn't fully stick to Ramadan either, which I completely understand.
Yeah.
Anybody who's judging for that, you better not have any Catholic friends who sort of give up on Lent halfway through, because most religious people make those compromises all the time. I mean, shit, every Muslim in the world drinks coffee and tea, and that's technically not allowed. So nobody complains about that.
Yeah, for sure. Are you up with your Leviticus? Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it was a very good decision that he was like, I'm going to observe, but I can't afford to be fasting and not drinking all day right now. I'm preparing for the biggest fight of my life. Fair enough, dude. Yeah, well, I cannot wait for the rematch. It seems like it is definitely going to happen. But we will have a while to wait until that. So, let's take our first break, and when we come back, we got a few other interesting fights to talk about. Justin Gaethje, Rafael Fiziev, Ignacio Bahamondes, crushing, in fact, Jalen Turner, Mauricio Ruffy, giving King Bobby the 30th knockout in the last 3 years. That man should probably think about retiring. And, a couple other things too, but we'll probably stick to the main card mostly. One way or the other, Gaethje Fiziev 2 after this.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to this week's Heavy Hands. If you like what you hear, please consider pledging to support the podcast on Patreon. Patreon is basically continuous crowdfunding. You sign up to contribute a certain amount per month to help us with production costs and the like, and in return you get rewards ranging from a mention on the Heavy Hands website to a question or topic of your choice being discussed on the show. We have a lot more in the works to reward you for your help, and we appreciate every contribution. No amount is too small. Just head over to patreon.com and find how you can help out, the only show dedicated to the finer points of face punching. Now let's get back to it.
All right. Welcome back to Heavy Hands. Let's talk about our short notice fill-in co-main event. Having seen a lot of these at this point, I can't escape, I can't help but feel just slightly disappointed that we didn't get to see, this rematch under ideal circumstances. Having said that, I don't know how much it would have changed anything. Because did Fiziev gas out any sooner in this fight than he did in the one where he had a full camp? I don't think so. Basically the same fight with a couple new twists. I'll let you take the lead.
What was up with the odds on this card?
Oh yeah, me and Zane were mystified by the first 4 fights. They made no sense at all.
What was because I say this as someone who picked either because there's a lot of the time when I don't actually look at the odds, right, until after the.
Yeah.
I don't. It's not even something where I'm worried that I'm going to be influenced by the odds. I simply don't care.
That's how big a gambler Phil is. He just throws the money down without even looking at the book first.
Yeah. But yeah, they do like pop up afterwards, but I do generally have like a sense in my head.
Yeah.
Of who should be predicted to win a fight. And then, sometimes I will go for a flyer and I'll be like, actually, I think this person's going to win or whatever.
Yeah.
So, and that was exactly what I did when I picked Rafael Fiziev to win this fight. Because I was like, surely Justin Gaethje will be the favorite for obvious reasons.
Yeah, he won the first fight.
He won the first fight and it looked kind of replicable.
And Fiziev had a knee injury and he was out for a year.
Yeah, and he looked like shit. And Gaethje looked like shit against a nightmare-style matchup, and Fiziev looked like shit against someone who he should have actually looked quite good against. I was like, I'm going to take a flyer on Fiziev. I was like, what, he's the favorite?
Yeah.
But why?
Ankalaev was the favorite, which, as it turns out, was correct, but surprising, given what I would have expected the consensus to be. Amanda Lemos was an underdog to Yasmin Lucindo. That
I don't know what's going on.
Something strange.
Some of these ended up working. Yeah, some of the weird lines ended up working out. I've never ever had an event where I've been so confused, but consistently confused by the lines coming out afterwards.
Yeah, same. I agree.
After I've made my picks, because that's the only time I've already seen the lines. But I'm just like, what? Yeah. But that because watching this fight and in the run up to this fight, I was like, sure. Rafael Fiziev, he is a striking coach. He's clearly a thoughtful fighter in his own way, in a way that Justin Gaethje isn't. He can find ways to win this fight. Other people have been able to figure out Justin Gaethje.
Yeah. And he's got a great blueprint to try to work with, that Max Holloway fight, right? That's a different approach he could try.
Yeah. Yeah. Or indeed, any of the other effective ways people have used to really beat Justin Gaethje in the past. I think Fiziev's clinch game looked good. I mean, he looked amazing for this being on short notice.
Absolutely.
One of the other things is that he looked locked in and he looked ready to go. Maybe he would have looked even better if he'd had a longer amount of time to prepare for Gaethje and he really had a game plan to work with. But yeah, just in retrospect, this was a super dumb pick. Why did I make it? I'm a moron. And because Rafael Fiziev is, I must have said this before, he is completely incapable of controlling a fight.
Yep.
There is nothing in his game which allows him to control a fight and how it's going. I mean, there was one point in this fight, I think it was in the second round, which was as it turned out, well, actually, no, it wasn't the one that determined the fight because he got knocked down in that one. But, the fight was extremely easy to score. But there was a point where, he started, feinting jabs at Justin Gaethje. And Gaethje, being Gaethje, immediately went whoa! And, panicked and shelled up and retreated. Just hugely overreacted to, feinted jabs.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought to myself, one, I'm a moron. Why did I ever pick Justin Gaethje to beat Max Holloway, even if I was worried that Max Holloway was broken? But this is how this man responds to these kind of threats. Obviously, Max Holloway would absolutely eat him alive.
Yeah, don't worry.
Two,
we're idiots together on that one.
Why don't you just keep doing that, Rafael Fiziev? If your problem is that you end up just endlessly dumping energy into huge, into like huge bursts of speed and power and so on, would it be great? And and that you keep clashing with someone who's just bigger and stronger than you, and getting hustled in the clinch. Gaethje doesn't need to be a nuanced counterpuncher. He just needs to sling shots at center mass.
Yep.
Surely you could like try and draw those things out by just peppering him a bit.
Yeah.
Like both Dustin Poirier and Eddie Alvarez did. Like Eddie Alvarez, is he a notable jabber? Like, not really.
I mean, he does jab quite a bit, but he really loves that lead right hand, doesn't he?
It's not what you think of when you think of like what Eddie Alvarez does well.
Yeah.
Surely you could replicate that. You have a much better range game than Eddie Alvarez.
Yeah.
Like,
faster for one thing.
Rafael Fiziev. Yeah, exactly. Like, and again, he could simply draw the counters out of Justin Gaethje without having to charge in and just exchange with someone who is bigger and stronger than him. But he's never going to do that. Yeah. He's never going to do that, and I was stupid. I was stupid for thinking he would. He would change things in that way.
I gotta say, first round, I thought I was stupid. I was like, oh, he's just gonna do what Max Holloway did. He's just gonna stay at long range, and he's gonna jab him, and he's gonna throw short combinations and reset, and he's gonna land a lot of his, lightning fast kicks, which a few people have pointed out on Twitter, never seem to actually hurt anyone, even though they seem like, they seem like Edson Barboza kicks, but they just like, I think he was trying to do his version of Eddie Alvarez's body work, which was, critical to beating Gaethje, and it just didn't affect Gaethje. It's very strange. They looked like hard kicks, they sounded like hard kicks, but Gaethje just walked him off with no trouble. I don't know what's going on there, but
I mean, that happened in the first fight. All of that stuff. Body work and so on. Yeah, I think he was even more committed to ineffectual body work in the first fight.
But
yeah, it's just...
He was really making Gaethje look old and hesitant and completely unsure of what to do when he was sticking to that range game. And then I was like, oh wait, he has like an inverse version of the Ankalaev problem. Ankalaev goes like, I'm fine, I'm winning. That's what him and Leon Edwards do. I'm fine, I'm winning. I don't have to keep trying so hard. And then, oh shit, the other guy's still trying to win too. I have to do something. For Fiziev, he's like, I'm fine, I'm winning. This is boring.
Yeah, I have to go in.
I want blood. And as it turns out, even though I really thought I was dead wrong watching the first round, the simple call that I made, which is that Fiziev can't help but crashing into Gaethje and just giving him chances to land bombs, was correct. Because no matter how brilliantly he started this fight, round 2 came and he was like, I have to do more. I have to hurt him. I have to throw 5-punch combinations. And that's what got him into trouble.
And he'd also completely given up any idea of like feinting.
Yeah.
Or jabbing.
Yeah. Control is truly what separates the great fighters from the merely decent fighters. Can you shut your opponent out of the fight? That's how you win at the high level, because you can't knock everyone out. And Fiziev just does not have that. He has not internalized how important that actually is. He cannot convince himself to stick to simply winning. He has to do better. He has to do more. And man, the turning point in the second round was so funny, because he was getting Gaethje to duck the jab and he was hitting him with that uppercut. And he did it like 3 times, and then he just went for it again, except Gaethje rolled instead of merely ducking, and then just landed his own uppercut. Because it's like Fiziev is doing so many things that I'm constantly begging a guy like Ankalaev to do. If it works, keep doing it, and build on your attacks. But it's like he's doing it when it is completely unnecessary, when it is in fact like deleterious to his winning chances to continue trying to get more and more and more. Sometimes what you're doing is enough. You're winning.
Yeah.
And he's just not content with merely winning. He wants to stun his opponent. He wants to put on a show. And so he just went from having reenacting Gaethje's loss to Holloway to simply having a Justin Gaethje fight in the space of about 8 minutes.
Reenacting his own loss to Justin Gaethje.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, I think like maybe he would have been able to keep that up for longer if he'd been able to train for it for longer, but it's still so obviously not what he wants to do.
It's not in his nature, certainly.
Yeah, it's like with this, like I know a guy who's been playing Tekken, and he's tried to move from Lee, who's a very sort of counter-hit heavy character, to Kazuya, who is a character who can sort of is just a very potent, like, guessing game character. And he's really struggling with Kazuya because he knows that the character is, like, around guessing and knocking you down and keeping you on the floor and keeping you from standing up again. And I'm like, this is because... And he's like, I have to, like, casino the other guy to death. I have to, like, make sure when I knock him down that he never stands up again. And he just dies to certain characters because he cannot ride the life lead. He cannot be, he cannot have he cannot have 60% of his life left and the other person has 40%. He will go in and he will try a big risky guess.
Yeah.
Like, you don't need to do that. You're winning.
Now is not the time to gamble. Just maintain. Yeah.
Just ride the lead. And Fiziev is just...
That's his problem.
Mentally, and in some ways technically, incapable of doing that. Like, it's not that he's not technically incapable, like he can't throw a jab or whatever, but you know what I mean? His game just isn't built for that. He's just chained together all this stuff so many times that he just can't stop himself.
Yeah, it was crazy too.
Him,
that after that second round, he doubled down on trying to kill Gaethje rather than reverting to the thing that had worked brilliantly in round one. I mean, I said, incorrectly, I now think, on Twitter, like the moment this fight started, I was a minute in, I was like, oh, Gaethje got old. He's old. He looks terrible. Which is exactly the impression I had of his fight with Max Holloway. As it turns out, it's just a style matchup thing. He fucking sucks against people who can fight from long range and feed him a host of setups and trick him and make him, and test his footwork and outmaneuver him. He sucks against those fighters. He doesn't know how to handle them. And it makes him look like the clumsiest, slowest, most hesitant fighter on the planet.
Yeah.
And
and conversely for Fiziev, that's a classic Fiziev third round. We said at the time, like, when we realized it sort of in the aftermath, Fiziev's, like, big knockout against RDA. It's not actually a good thing because, on the one hand, it was like, oh, he can knock people out if he goes late into fights and he's struggling. Maybe he doesn't have bad gas tank.
Yeah.
You're like, no, that's not what happened. It's that he went out there and he was like, oh, shit's getting bad. And he doubled down, dumping all of his energy into one burst.
And it just worked.
And then it worked. It worked on RDA, and it did not work both times against Justin Gaethje. He started very strong in the third round, and then had nothing left at the end of it.
Any kind of competitor has these kind of mental traps that they talk themselves into again and again. And it's just really clear at this point that that is Fiziev's. And I will say right now, this man will not become a serious contender or a champion unless he can learn how to be content with simply winning a fight.
Yep. I think he's going to go to featherweight.
Oh,
I think that's probably a good plan.
Solve his problems.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of his problems are simply that he's too small.
Yeah, I mean, it might allow the current style he has to work better to the sheer point.
Yeah,
he can just bully people.
But yeah, he ain't beaten Max Holloway. Unless Max Holloway is super shot.
Yeah.
It's still a fundamental flaw which will hold him back. This will probably be a good weight class for him, I think, if he does do that. I think it will be good for him, but there's a limit to how far he can go because he just can't stop himself. I mean, it makes him an incredible action fighter.
Oh yeah.
Like, absolutely guaranteed barn burner kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, just, it's kind of crippling.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that's all I have to say on that one. Let's take another break. When we come back, we've got, Amanda Lemos, Yasmin Lucindo.
Yay.
Just kidding. Bahamondes Turner and Ruffy Green after this.
Financial support is fantastic, but there are other, even easier ways to support Heavy Hands. Perhaps the best is by spreading the word. We know our fan base. You're all cool, popular people with serious social media presences. You're tastemakers and trendsetters. Okay, there are one or two of you that don't fit that description. You know who you are, but no matter what, you can always help us out by telling folks about the show. And you can also give us a positive rating and review on iTunes and Stitcher, things like that. We rely on word of mouth and positive feedback to grow and improve, so thank you very much for your time and your help. Now, back to the show.
Welcome back. Let's talk about some more lightweights. Ignacio Bahamondes, Jalen Turner. Unfortunately, the story of this fight is not so much about Ignacio Bahamondes as I would like it to be. Because I like Ignacio Bahamondes. He's a fun fighter. There was a wonderful, heartwarming clip posted where Bilal Muhammad was telling him about his post-fight, or his fight bonus win. And he was like, hey, Ignacio, I've been practicing my Spanish. Tell me how this is. And he was like, Pelea de Noche or whatever. And it also made me a little sad. It's like, how there's always those heartwarming stories in the news where it's like 95-year-old grandmother gets day off work.
Yeah.
It was a little bit of that where I'm like, man, this dude is so overjoyed to be getting $50K. That's, shit, I would be too. I mean, $50K sounds just about right now in my life, but boy, he deserves more than that given how tough his career is and how much money the organization brings in. But, it was a nice little clip and I was like, yeah, this is why I like Bilal and this is sweet. And all of this is to say that, sadly, I think the real story of this fight is that Jalen Turner fought like a man who was very seriously contemplating retirement, which, as it turns out, he was.
Yeah. So, I picked this one correctly. Yep. And again, what was going on with the odds? Because I was like, right? I'm going to do something crazy, and I'm going to pick Ignacio Bahamondes to beat Jalen Turner.
Right.
Even though he has no business beating Jalen Turner. He hasn't beaten or competed with anyone that's on the level of the people that Jalen Turner has been beating. I have confidently picked Jalen Turner to beat genuinely good fighters before. This is simply a gut pick, but it's almost certainly a stupid one. But Bahamondes was the fake. What was going on with the odds? I still don't get it.
I don't know. Yeah, I too was really struck by that. I was, cause as I said, both on this show and on the Vivisection, I was like, levels, baby. Ignacio Bahamondes has gotten some big results, but Jalen Turner is having close scrapes with excellent fighters. And
yeah,
there's just no way that Bahamondes is going to be ready for, the kind of fight Jalen Turner has been through multiple times. And yeah, what of course I didn't know, maybe if I'd looked at the man's Instagram or something and saw that he was very clearly in a depression spiral, I would have considered that. But, what I didn't know is that he was I can't really think of many times when I've seen a clearer example of somebody not mentally being there. I mean, from the beginning of this fight, that's how he took one shot really early, and he just started fighting out of not determination or perseverance, but desperation. He was like, that's not supposed to happen. Go, go, go. And he just, after that, just kept walking into everything. And then he got Bahamondes down, and then he put himself in a triangle.
Yep.
He committed suicide by triangle choke. I mean, he literally, like, it was there, he postured up out of it, and then he just laid down into it. I wish there was more complimentary stuff to say about Ignacio Bahamondes, but you cannot evaluate the result of this fight from without noticing how clearly unwell Jalen Turner was, at least in the way that he would need to be well to be an effective fighter. So I'm seeing this. I'm actually very glad that he retired, and I hope it sticks.
Yeah, it won't. He's too young. He's too
probably
physical and too good. I mean, I hope he comes back.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he'll rejuvenate.
And I hope he comes back in a way that's fun for him.
Yeah,
right. What I've pretty much always thought is that he should be a welterweight because he would still be bigger than everyone.
Yeah,
and I think it's probably just like a really miserable experience for him. And if he's not enjoying being a fighter, I don't think that, I think that a big part of that can be the weight cutting and the slog and everything that kind of goes together with it. But yeah, also I would be fine if he just retired because, yeah, he's always seemed like a mild-mannered, gentle guy.
Mm-hmm.
And, maybe this just isn't for him. And he's given us lots of, amazing finishes and great fights, and, if he wants to step away, then fantastic. But yeah, I think, and the other thing about, picking and again, I still think of this as, an upset, because I just think those lines are insane.
Oh yeah, it is an upset. I don't care what the odds were. The odds makers were not right, unless somebody had an inside line that Jalen Turner was not doing good. But even then, I would have assumed they would make Jalen Turner the favorite and then, cash in on a bunch of bets.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
But yeah, so, and it wasn't a particularly good, because typically what you want is you want to be able to call the shape of the fight, right? Rather than any specific outcome. So, if you're calling an upset, you don't necessarily want it to just be, my general pick of it was that Turner would just get discouraged by Bahamondes' just pure toughness.
Yeah.
And that he would sort of lose a war. And it definitely didn't expect that it was just going to be Bahamondes gets taken down off his own blown takedown attempt.
Yeah.
Spends the entirety of the fight on his back. And then, Turner submits himself.
I mean, not the entirety. He was also handily beating Turner on the feet. Turner didn't even get a chance to test Bahamondes' toughness to get discouraged by it.
Yeah.
Like I said, he just got whacked with a right hand immediately, and then he was just not feeling there's a thing that happens to chess players, when they're streaming, really good players, you already talked about Tekken, Phil, so I'm allowed to do this. Hikaru Nakamura, for example, one of the best chess players in the world, also one of the most annoying people in the world, but a very, very good chess player, particularly in blitz. And sometimes you'll see a guy like that, or a guy like Eric Hansen, who I watch a lot of, and these are all great players, and you'll just see them starting a stream and playing a bunch of games, and they're like, fuck, I'm not seeing anything. I'm not seeing the my sense is just not there. That was what it felt like was happening with Jalen Turner. He was reacting at all times. Even though he was trying to pressure, he was always a step behind. He just could not tell what was coming at any moment in the fight. He was constantly somehow pressuring while being mentally on the back foot.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the story of the fight.
but the core reason why I made that pick, I think, was still relatively sound, which is simply, beyond anything about the actual fights, is it? Because I was just looking at the two of them and I was like, one of these guys is a guy who is finding ways to win, and the other one is a guy who is finding ways to lose.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I think and you do occasionally get people like this, where they're just, super technically, they're like technically well put together. They're offensively potent, and you can just sort of see it coming after a while. They're just, and it's getting worse. It starts to get worse. You think of like Jordan Mean, Tom Breese,
Yep.
guys like this where you just look at them and you're like, you are so good. And you just, and how is it not working? You can just, eventually you're just like, yeah, you are kind of finding ways to lose these fights. You are not capable of holding it in them. And if you are, it's by your absolute fingertips.
Yeah, he's not that good, because he's a heavyweight, but Alexander Romanov, clearly went through the same thing. Like, I remember that guy had his debut, crushed his opponent, and then he had a loss, and then his next fight, he looked flabby. He hadn't shaved. I was like, oof, this man he's spiraling. He's depressed. Some fighters hide it well. You wouldn't have guessed necessarily that Alexander Volkanovski was prone to depression if he hadn't talked about it, But some guys, it just jumps off the screen that they are not in a good place after a tough result.
Yeah, I mean, with Turner, it was you just never got that impression of with a lot of those guys, you get the feeling that they are working from a limited reservoir of, I don't want to say will, it's more like enjoyment. That they're, there's some people that will just do this forever if they could, like Dustin Poirier or Justin Gaethje or whatever, and they'll, and eventually their body and their mind will start to betray them, but you never get the impression that they don't like it.
Yeah, Jose Aldo still loves fighting.
Some people, but other people you get the impression it's just being slowly driven out of them over time, like the Tom Breeses and the Jordan Means. It's you get the impression that they didn't get into this sport because they're absolutely addicted to it, or if they did, that they're falling out of love with it, and they're just starting to fall out more and more. And that was the only but technically speaking, it wasn't a great pick, and the fight didn't look that way. But I was like, I mean, Bahamondes, he finds ways to win. I don't think he's going to go that much further than his. I never would have thought that he could make it to a top 15 ranking or whatever he's going to get out of this. I don't think he'll go much further than that, because he'll just come up against other people, like for example Dan Hooker, who again. Has,
if anybody has an excuse to get discouraged, right? The Edson Barboza fight. Fuck Bahamondes after the McDessie fight. If you're going to be the kind of guy who is good at this but doesn't necessarily love it, that's going to be the fight. That's your come to Jesus moment, right? Didn't happen.
Yeah. I mean, 2 points of that for Dan Hooker. A brutal destruction from Edson Barboza, but also, even worse, his absurdly botched attempt to return to featherweight, where he got thumped by Arnold Allen.
Yep.
We thought he was done at that point, but
still has the
Dan
passion.
Hooker he's just about this life. Yeah, you can tell. He's got a deep well of love for this game, and Jalen Turner. He was just looking like someone for whom that was not the case more and more lately.
Yeah, we talk and whinge constantly about athleticism being cheating, But passion is cheating too. And it really is an important secret ingredient, like that. Any guy who I think I'm like, wow, this dude is not athletically capable of being good at MMA. Any one of those guys who surprises me at how high they rise, Chepe Mariscal right now is just winning and winning and winning. That dude fucking loves it. You know, and even if it's not like what we would categorize as enjoyment, he's obsessed with it in the way that like the Diaz brothers were. You know, Nick Diaz famously hated fighting, but he had a codependent relationship with the thing he hated.
Yeah, he couldn't not do it.
Exactly. So even if it's not passion, there's some kind of drive that is really not entirely up to you that you need to continue competing at this level. And yeah, you've got guys like Chepe Mariscal and Ignacio Bahamondes and Alex Morono, who may have also gotten retired on this card. Did he announce a retirement, or did he just look bad and he should retire?
I don't remember him retiring,
But Morono is a guy very much in that category where it's like, this dude's not good enough for MMA. Turns out he kind of is, because he's got the drive.
Yep.
You know, will to win and willingness to go through the horrible, unpleasant things that can happen to you in a fight. And I'm not saying anything against Jalen Turner. Like, most people don't have that level of obsession, and it's totally fine if he doesn't. And if he doesn't, it's 100% the right call to retire. Try something else. But yeah.
Wow, I'm just checking out Alex Morono, and he got the 50 times drug tested jacket. Come on, guys, you didn't need to do that.
Thank God.
It's Alex Morono, man.
I was suspicious about him.
He should be allowed, to be frank.
Absolutely, yes. He should be being given steroids gratis by the UFC. This is a man who, if not for his shitty body, would be a really great fighter. Come on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but clearly.
Check if you've been doing any. Check if you've been doing any steroids, Alex. Like, I've been doing any steroids? I'm clean. Why not? Please. Please. Do some steroids.
You don't think this muffin top is natty? Yeah. So, you know, we'll see. Ignacio Bahamondes, he certainly enjoys it, and he will enjoy getting pushed out of the top 10 probably pretty soon. And he'll be back for more because he's got that in him. He's got the dog in him. Amanda Lemos, Jasmine Lucindo was one of the worst fights I've ever seen. And
sorry, Lucindo was a favorite.
Yeah, again.
What is going on?
Inexplicable. Doesn't make any sense. You know,
what was this based on? Like, she was just going to out-athlete Amanda Lemos, you know?
Yeah.
I don't understand.
Yeah. She
don't understand.
Barely scraped by a pretty old and shot-looking Marina Rodriguez by hanging around at long range and doing nothing but waiting for counters. No setups, no control, just waiting for Rodriguez to make a mistake, which she was willing to do a few too many times for her own good. And that's genuinely how close the fight was. Now she's going to go in there and hang out at range and try to time Amanda Lemos. Yeah, good luck.
Yeah, this is a truly classic, like, pick the OG fight. Because Amanda Lemos was just like, oh, you like being an empty, open space counterpuncher?
Yep. Yeah.
That too.
And Zayn...
You know what I really hate? People sitting on me.
Yeah. Zayn was talking about Lemos's sort of newfound love for grappling, getting her in trouble. No.
No.
No. It was the most boring way.
She was fighting a younger, greener version of herself.
Yeah, precisely. So that's that. Let's talk about Mauricio Ruffy. I knew I was not making the correct pick here. I was You know I knew. I said as much. I was willing it to happen.
I find it charming.
You got to do it sometimes.
Yep, my heart is both rotted and calcified. The parts which haven't just molted and sloughed away.
Yeah.
have just turned to pure stone. So I found it genuinely slightly touching that you were like,
he could do it, right?
Green's got this. You could do it, Bobby.
This isn't the kind of guy who beats Bobby Green. You didn't mean to lose to Paddy Pimblett. Yeah, you make your flyer picks based on like intuition and analysis sense, and I make my flyer picks based on love. What can I say? I love Bobby Green. I wanted to see him happy just one more time, and it's now looking like he's going to need a significant step down in competition for that to ever happen again.
Oh no, that's not going to happen, Connor.
Yeah, where the
UFC is running out of people who
yeah,
where the fans know who they are. So, well, we need to give old Bobby a bit more CTE.
Let's rematch Green and Fiziev. Remember how good that fight was? Except that Fiziev, while critically thoughtless, is still kind of, he's still there. He's still the same guy, and Bobby Green is not.
Honestly, I would probably, the most brutal rematch I could think of nowadays would be Nasrat Haqparast, because I think he might actually beat Bobby Green.
Oh God, don't make me watch that. That is the last true moment of greatness in Bobby Green's career. Do not take that away from me or from him.
Mm-hmm.
I won't stand for it. What more is there to say? I mean,
Hoofy's he's just big, and that's always been
big, fast, powerful.
It is just a problem for Green, as we said, against Turner, which is why that was a relatively easy pick as well, because he can't hang out at the edge of range.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, he just doesn't matter. He's athletic. He's an athletic finisher, and
yeah.
And the thing about the Pimblett lot that's the most. Actually, no, it was at least 3 minutes in. It was. I was thinking it was later than it was.
Nope.
But yeah, it was. If it had been later, it would have been even worse. But at least it was still like early enough that it could still be. You could still put it down to, a opportunistic younger fighter just taking his chances.
Yeah, and Bobby Green. He's now reached a point where, while historically everything I said about this not being the kind of fighter who shines against Bobby Green was true, the reality now is that clearly Hoofy's style is poison for Bobby Green, because he's going to hang back and try to time him.
Mm-hmm.
And the simple fact that Hoofy is, has long reach and is very fast and doesn't give you a lot of information to kind of key in your defense means that, like, what's Bobby supposed to do?
Yep. He's going to get hit by one giant shot and it's going to nuke him.
Yep.
Which is pretty much exactly what happened, albeit like 2 shots.
Yeah. Even last week I said, like, he has to survive. Some bad shit's going to happen and he has to survive. And then, because timing beats speed, maybe he can pick up on it. But that's just not even, he can't even afford he can't even afford like waiting for a comeback anymore. Not against this kind of opponent. Or possibly.
Very, I mean, he's like a much less, subtle, dangerous fighter than Jalen Turner, but yeah, it's the same basic equation. It's just like, you're going to hang out at range against this guy.
Yeah.
You can't do that anymore.
Yep. Should have seen it coming. I felt it coming, but I refuse to acknage it.
Yeah.
I know. It's not true unless I agree it's true.
Don't worry. No one thought you were making it because you thought it was likely.
How was I still emotionally crushed by the result then? Explain that. How did I how did I reason myself into being like, this is the wrong pick, I'm doing it for fun, and then just have no fun at all watching the opposite play out? I'm a fool.
You made yourself believe.
Yep.
Again, genuinely touching.
My heart is full of love, Phil. You know, I can't help it.
Yeah, well, I hope you've learned your lesson, basically. That's what happens when you love Connor.
Become more like Phil. Have a, a blackened,
cynical,
ossified heart.
Yeah. Cynical monster who's dead inside, who merely, like, gets a sort of nothing more than, like, a dark satisfaction from seeing, like, yeah, that's what you get for watching, when he watches, like, old beloved fighters get snuffed.
What made you think this wasn't going to happen, you idiot? That's how you feel when they...
Yeah, but, you know, with less emotion.
Yeah. Oh,
like,
silly,
just like,
silly Bobby Green.
that's what you get.
Cold satisfaction watching a beloved fighter just get decimated. So
it did make me very sad to see. Obviously, I did not want to watch Bobby Green lose to Ruffy, but you know, after the Pimblett fight, I was just like, because I'm still not going to rate Paddy Pimblett at any point.
No, I mean the fact that we look at what just happened to Bobby Green, that's Paddy Pimblett's best win.
Yeah,
by a long shot.
Yeah, and so if you lose to Paddy Pimblett, I'm still, no matter who you are, I'm just going to be like, that means you are shot beyond imagination.
Yep.
And yeah, even if he, you know, even when he taps out Islam Makhachev, that's still going to be my takeaway.
Hey man, the people love him. He got a big pop when they showed him in the arena. He got as big a pop as Robbie Lawler got.
I didn't even see. How fat is he?
He didn't look that fat, actually. I should have clocked that. He looked pretty normal.
Weird.
Yeah. Maybe the Paddy Pimblett title run is real.
Yeah.
Speaking of Bobby Lawler, I mean, just to mention, he, you know, I'm not one to give a particular fuck about the UFC Hall of Fame, but it clearly meant a lot to Robbie Lawler. And for that reason, I'm very happy that he was honored in that way. Speaking of people who went way late into their careers with the passion, Robbie Lawler was always an interesting case where he did have those moments in fights where he wasn't enjoying it and he was getting frustrated. The difference is that he had the superpower of getting so incredibly pissed off that he could come back and make the win happen.
Yeah. Notably, he only had that superpower very late in his career when he built up a stock of anger.
A lifetime of resentment and contempt for the people who dared to use boring methods to beat him. That he just stopped allowing it to happen. I've been through this too many times. Not again, he would think, and it worked for him. I'm very happy to see Robbie Lawler, you know, be emotional about that, and you know, these flowers mean something to him, and he deserves that.
100%. If I cared about the UFC Hall of Fame, I would care about Robbie Lawler being in it.
Yeah, I do care about it simply because it means something to him.
As it is, I care about it because he cares. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm happy for him. All right, well, that's really everything. I mean, you know, Joshua Van had a good performance.
Connor, what about next week though?
Hold on.
Fights next week.
Hold on. Marvin Vettori versus Roman Dolidze. Well, at least this will be new. We've never seen these guys fight before. Oh, wait. It's an early frontrunner for the Oliveira Lentz Award of the year. A shoo-in, if anything, because no one asked for this. Literally no one. If you can think of two fighters who feel like you can't deny that they are contenders, but also they feel utterly irrelevant to the title picture in the middleweight division, it's these guys. I will say, since we will be talking about this next week, it's not too bad as Apex cards go. The main event is dire, and I am not looking forward to that, but Chidi Njokuani versus Zaleski dos Santos is on there. We've got
That'll be cool.
Alex Hernandez getting a more measured, passable test against Kurt Hollabaugh, who may still beat him. I think that's a good matchup. Damon Blackshear, a dysfunctional prospect, is going to be tested by the relentlessness of underpowered Cody Gibson. That seems like a fight that's born to have a momentum swing in there at some point. It's got some okay stuff on it. Unfortunately, it also has Waldo Cortez Acosta versus Ryan Spann at heavyweight.
I was going to say.
That's going to be tough. But I have certainly
Ryan
seen...
Spann at heavyweights.
Yeah. Well, what else is he going to do at this point? He may as well, right?
But when you truly give up.
Maybe Ryan Spann became a father.
Yeah.
You got the dad energy now. Who knows? So yeah, it's actually, you know, I've certainly seen worse Apex cards. It's not all terrible. So we will have some stuff to talk about.
It should at least be mostly fun.
Yeah, we'll have some stuff to talk about next week. And of course, we will also at that point be looking forward to Leon Edwards versus Sean Brady. Jan Blachowicz versus Carlos Ulberg. Gunnar Nelson, Kevin Holland.
What?
Where's Gunnar Nelson been? Other than Iceland, obviously.
Yeah.
Nathaniel Wood, Morgan Charriere. That's a great fight.
That's a cool fight.
This is a pretty good card for the English fans, I gotta say.
Yep.
So we'll have some good stuff to talk to you about next week. And I hope you agree. We had some, if not incredibly entertaining, then very interesting and significant stuff to talk about this week pertaining to UFC 313. So, to close out, find us on social media. We're both on Twitter at BoxingBush and at Evil Greg Jackson. If I happen to log into it, you may be able to find me on Blue Sky, the dead site that I occasionally look at because Twitter is so fucking annoying. And I will also say I published my first piece in quite a while on my Substack, Magomed Ankalaev, last week, and I am already so very nearly done with my piece about Ankalaev Pereira that I'm willing to say, look for it. You will find it on the Substack at the time you hear this episode. I only say that, Phil, when I'm sure it's going to be done. I'm almost finished. So.
Yeah. I'm going to believe you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thousands wouldn't.
What is that? That's an old catchphrase from something. I believe you. Thousands wouldn't.
Just a general... I think it's just a general British thing to say.
That was like on whatever Britain's version of like the Ed McMahon show was or something. That's like Britain's Johnny Carson made that joke.
Yep.
All right. Well, we'll be back next week. Until then, if you came here today for the finer points of face punching, you came to the right place. This has been Heavy Hands.